Hello, new staff members. We need to talk about the North Carolina Code of Ethics for educators and teachers. This is a part of North Carolina General Statutes 115C, and it actually falls under 295.3, and they are guidelines for how teachers should conduct themselves, not only in their own classrooms, but also in the entire school. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the actual Code of Ethics and what the State Board of Education says about the Code of Ethics, and then kind of give you some suggestions as how you can make sure that you are sticking to the guidelines and sticking to the actual facets of the Code of Ethics, which will make you not only a better educator, but also will help the school to run a whole lot more smoothly. The first part is commitment to students. Kind of going over the basics there. Make sure you create a safe learning environment for your students. Make sure you have an appropriate relationship with your students in all settings. Make sure you stay away from any kind of inappropriate conduct with students. Make sure you evaluate students and assign grades based upon their proficiency and what they are achieving as far as the competency goals. Stay away from favorites, essentially. Discipline students justly and fairly. Make sure that you do not discipline them in a way where it's going to embarrass them or it's going to belittle them. Make sure you follow all rules, regulations, standards, and statutes for confidential information to students. And make sure that you stay away from accepting excessive gifts from not only students but also parents, members of the community. And make sure that your commitment is just for the students and their education. Some suggestions for this particular area of the Code of Ethics. If you discipline students, make sure you discipline them in a way where it's not going to belittle them, it's not going to embarrass them, and make sure you have another adult, a colleague involved in the process of discipline a student. Whether it's something small or something major, have another adult in the room with you, that way that it doesn't turn into a he said, she said kind of situation. Keep all confidential information about students in a secure and locked spot in your classroom. Make sure that you are the only one that can access it, unless a situation arises where you do need to use that confidential information as legally required. Keep in mind, news stations love negative stories about teachers and students in particular negative student interactions with teachers. Keep yourself out of the news. Use fair and equitable grading procedures. Make sure that everything that you take a grade for, you can link back to student performance. You can link back to effective grading procedures, but also establish ways where grades are not judgmental. Establish rules for student conduct and relate this back to the overall school rules. Make sure those rules are followed. That way you're creating a safe learning environment. And absolutely never, ever, ever be alone with the student. The next area in the Code of Conduct is commitment to school and school system. Utilize your resources that your school has, but don't misuse them. Keep political viewpoints or religious viewpoints, cultural viewpoints out of your classroom. Make sure you're not trying to espouse your religious beliefs or your cultural beliefs on students and make them think that your point of view is correct. Keep that out of your job in the classroom. Be aware of their viewpoints, but also don't say their viewpoint is negative or positive in any way. Keep that out of your business, which is instructing your students according to the standards. Do not leave the teaching profession without a substantial reason. Don't just quit and just say, well, I couldn't take it anymore. Make sure you participate in the decision-making process, and also help others realize that if they have a viewpoint that's different than yours, it's okay. Schools need solid decision-making to operate and be successful. Now, if you're a supervisor, if you're in a supervisory kind of role, things change up with this one a little bit. You got to act fairly and equitably when making decisions as related to the people that you're supervising. You evaluate their work according to established policies and procedures, and that would be going back to the teach observation instruments or things like that. Do not coerce or retaliate against others when their viewpoint isn't the same as yours. And make sure that you're recommending people for hiring and firing based upon local set guidelines, but also make sure that you are following state and local laws and procedures, and in particular the employment process. Suggestions: prepare lesson plans which take into account those different kind of religious beliefs, and don't say that one is better than the other one. Make sure you're very careful what you're saying in your classroom as far as religious and political beliefs. Identify resources to maximize learning at minimal cost. That way you're not misusing the school's resources. Make sure you honor your commitment to your school and your school system. Give them ample notice if you feel like you have to step down, or if you have to quit your job. Make sure you don't leave the students hanging out there, and kind of a way of saying. Make sure that they have plenty of opportunity to hire another person in your spot that is fully qualified. The last part is commitment to the profession. Make sure you provide your credentials as far as in the hiring process. Make sure that everything that you say you've done, you can prove. Whether it's your license or your coursework, whatever it may be. If it's highly qualified, make sure you can prove that you're highly qualified. Make sure that you promote the code of ethics to other teachers. Keep them accountable. If you see that they are violating something in the code of ethics, mention it to your supervisor immediately, because it does not just impact one teacher, it impacts the entire school. Pursue professional growth and development opportunities, and take what you learn in those development opportunities and bring it back to your school to help other teachers and help the profession. And then the last thing is standards of professional conduct. It's kind of the last part of the Code of Ethics and suggestions from the State Board of Education. Teachers need to serve as a positive role model, not only with their actions but also their words. And that would be staying away from vulgar language, profane language, or language that would belittle or embarrass students or groups of people. Do not engage in dishonesty or fraud, and that would be through resources, but also through representing yourself in ways that don't necessarily equate to what you can actually do. Obviously, treat all students with respect. Don't belittle or embarrass students. Kind of already talked about that. Keep physical contact with students absolutely missing. Make sure that you do not have inappropriate relationships with students. Make sure that you keep written accounts of actions that you were taking with your students as far as discipline. That way nothing's misconstrued. It doesn't turn into a he said, she said kind of situation. Keep all your confidential information locked up unless you need it as required by law. Make sure you turn in all your reports that you have to from the North Carolina General Statutes. That would be your integrated reports, your grading reports, and all those things. Make sure that you keep alcoholic beverages and controlled substances out of school. And that goes into you using, possessing, or actually passing those along to students. Make sure if you are actually part of a court proceeding, whether it's a misdemeanor or felony, you let your site supervisor know immediately so that they are not kind of taken by surprise. And of course, it winds up in the news then, which makes for a very uncomfortable situation. Do not misuse public funds. Make sure you keep a record and an account of all funds that you receive and process those according to local school district procedures and policies for collecting money. That way embezzlement does not come up as a potential scenario. And make sure that you keep your interactions, especially social interactions with students, to a school environment only. Stay outside of social media with your students. Make sure that you have a teaching capacity only, because social media does open up the opportunity for things to be misconstrued, cyberbullying to happen, or various other types of harassment, and of course that would paint a very negative image on the school. Thank you.